2 weeks ago, I met a friend for coffee. He was complaining legitimately about an issue that he was experiencing. I responded with sincerity, saying, "화이팅." Lifting his brow, he said, "Now that is such a Korean thing to say." And it is. He also pointed out that my response sounds insincere. For those of you that don't know what 화이팅 means, in literal translation, it means cheer up. But it also means all things supportive. It means you've got this. I'm rooting for you, and I hope all things turn around. Now, all these notes of support are condensed into this one word, but he probably just didn't know the nuances behind that word. But that's just one instance of how I get pushed into a role based on what I say or do, very much like Schrodinger's cat. Schrodinger's cat is a hypothetical thought experiment in which a cat is placed in a box with a radioactive substance that has a 50% chance of decaying and releasing a poison gas, killing the cat, and a 50% chance of remaining inert, in which the cat will remain alive. So it's all up to the observer. I am either dead or alive, Korean or American. And this is the challenge that third culture kids have, as I can be both things until observed. Third culture kids are people who grew up in a culture different from the one in which his, her, or their parents grew up. For example, if you were born in Thailand and your parents are Thai, but you spent a significant amount of time in Germany, so much so that you would identify yourself with German culture, then you would be a third culture kid. So, can I get a raise of hands to see how many of you are third culture kids? All right, I see quite a few hands, so I'm not alone here today. All right, so let me tell you, third culture kids are glorified to be extraordinary beings. I mean, we're global citizens, highly adaptive, susceptible to change. We also know what we want and are deliberate with relationships. Aren't we just fantastic? So the assumption is that only good things can be had for third culture kids. But no. I experience moments of happiness, but also in unhappiness as a result of my two different backgrounds, often caught between internal dissonance and external expectations. I'm going to tell you my story as a third culture kid from the perspective of myself as well as the observer. My two identities are Korean and American. In particular, I grew up in America, specifically in the Aloha State, from ages 6 to 14, and have lived in Korea since. For reference, I will be turning 21 near the end of this month. That being said, people like to go into technicalities of what I am, and often decide for me what I am. The usual lingo goes a little something like this. So, where are you really from? What are you? Are you Chinese? And then the analyzing begins. Okay, so you were born in Korea, immigrated to the States, and you came back. Do you have American citizenship? Oh no, you don't. You have a Korean passport. So you're Korean then. I mean, it's not as simple as that sounds. The thing is, I don't exactly look the part that is expected of me. In America, people don't exactly walk past me thinking, oh, that's an American. When people think of America, as much of a misconception as it is, they think fair skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes. I am yellow, have upturned monolid eyes, and a lower nose bridge. So I've got my East Asian look, right? But in Korea, my brows look different. My brows are arched rather than straight. I apply a full lip with darker muted colors, and wear fitted clothes that are cropped or reveal my shoulders. The thing is, people don't know what to make of me. The ethnicity and nationality part doesn't faze them much. How I dress, neither. It's my values that get to them, as I have both cultures embedded in me. The thing is, Being Korean Japanese, Korean Vietnamese, Korean Indonesian is different from being a Korean American. These two foundational philosophies conflict with each other, and they are so vastly different that there's no reconciling them in some aspects. South Korea follows the Confucian approach, also known as the doctrine of the mean. On Hofstede's cultural dimensions, South Korea is a collectivist society with high power distance, high uncertainty avoidance, and high context culture. People are respected based on their age, which insinuates that the older you are, you must have more wisdom, experience, and are accomplished. Korean culture tells me to accept these norms regardless. There is little reciprocity, and you obey purely in virtue of being Korean. So you follow the order. You listen to the government, then the leader of your household, your father, then the eldest son, and so on. At the same time, there's a sense of community that is accepting and warm. There's something about clinking glasses together every 15 minutes, reveling in our failures and success. Koreans also have selfless giving love. When you go to a market, an elderly woman who you're buying tofu from will give you an extra block because you remind her of her granddaughter. America lies on the opposite side of the spectrum, focusing on individualism with low power distance, low uncertainty avoidance, and low context culture. America's individualist society drills into what they're solely affected by, protecting solely their own rights and privileges, instead of approaching their allies, marginalized groups, or even the opposition, not working as a collective. There is critical questioning, but people merely use it to justify their own actions and choices. At the same time, I don't need to obey by virtue of being American. We are equal, and respect is something that you earn regardless of age nor experience. Curiosity and creativity are praised, and challenges are welcomed. Many times, I miss having a pleasant conversation with a stranger at the checkout line and the can-do attitude. Now, here are some visualizations illustrating the distinctions between the East and the West, created by artist Yang Liu, who also happens to be a third culture kid. At a Western party, people will get into small, intimate groups and will move around to other groups. In the East, there's usually one large inclusive circle, large inclusive group where people would do the same activity or games together. Time. It is precious in the West. Everyone is capable and responsible of keeping their own time, as it is rude to be late and keep others waiting. On the contrary, many even give it a name for the concept of time in the East. They call it the Asian time. It's a little more relaxed and there's more leniency. However, punctuality depends on the level of power that you hold. A person of higher power, say your boss for instance, can be late, while you as the subordinate should be early. Which brings us to organizational structure. In Western societies, there is a flatter organizational structure, as the boss is just one of the team. In the East, bosses are put on a pedestal, which means they have more power, authority, influence, and respect. The truth. Westerners will handle the truth in a way that is short and straightforward. Usually, the truth comes first, and then the explanation. But this may hurt some people in the process. Easterners may or may not give you their honest opinion, especially if it's negative. And when they do, they slowly approach the subject, building up to the truth and giving an explanation first, and then to the truth, which is in many ways synonymous to how these cultures deal with problems. In the West, we will walk straight through the puddle, though it can get messy and muddy, and get it over with. On the contrary, in the East, we will walk around the puddle, avoiding the problem, dismissing it, which sometimes solves the problem. Now, this last one is my favorite. In Western societies, the person inside the elevators, buses, or metros will usually get out first, and the person waiting in line will only proceed when the person has gotten off the vehicle. Now, for those of you who are used to that system, you may have found yourself frustrated in Korea with all the shoving and pushing and someone cutting in front of you in a queue. And I think the students here know this firsthand, as it is war in the morning to get on the elevator to your first class. So, understanding and accepting all of this, loving both cultures equally, it made me think, at what point am I expected to adhere to my American or Korean cultural norms? I understand and accept them. I react to the situation at hand depending on who I am with or where I am. But I don't need to conform to them, or I choose not to follow some of them. My friend who I spoke to a few weeks ago, he understands the world in a more binary sense. You see, we don't label or question or feel compelled to call out something that is common because it just exists. There's a difference between praise and blameworthiness. The actions that are typical of that culture are not always the best reflection. It's the less favorable that they point out. That being said, when people label me, they choose the side of me that is easier to be against than for. They label me to prove a point, to box me into whatever is convenient for them. People would scream, "Go back to your country, gook," while making slanted eye gestures. They would exclude me out of conversations or activities, saying, "Oh, you wouldn't understand, you're American." When I'm being introduced, people say, "Harim is different. She's not, Korean. And when I'm labeled as such, I feel reduced in some way. Now, my identities are not something that I'm denying nor rejecting. And as much as labeling can be necessary, labeling is usually harmful for the recipient. What labeling does is it diminishes my choice. It's like labeling a child with ADHD or pointing out a physical flaw. What good does that do for the recipient? It's like there's no benefit of having either identities. And I understand that some people don't intend to inflict harm, but it is harmful nonetheless. It's not their fault that they point out something that they want to fix or don't understand or are uncomfortable with, but it is their fault in the way that they handle it. It is damaging and challenging because I want to embrace those identities. And what labeling does is it diminishes my choice to identify with both, either or neither of those identities. Given this, what should the observer do? Well, before you commit to those stereotypes, maybe ask questions of what whiting even means. Ask for cultural contextualizations or nuanced meanings. It would also be great if the observer is made aware, holds back on the label, and sees me as a holistic person than a binary identity, sees me like a clean slate. Most importantly, it doesn't matter where we are from, what we are, but who we are and where we are going. That's what should matter. Because at the end of the day, like Schrodinger's cat, I'm both, but neither. Thank you.